Hey everyone, Pastor Curtis here with another quick question video. Andrew and Jessela asked, why does one verse mean something one day and something else another day, such as how to dress? And in my last video, I focused on taking verses in context. So today, I'll be looking more at the examples of maybe some confusing verses that talk about the way people are supposed to dress. And one verse that often trips people up or becomes an argument is 1 Timothy 2, verse 9, which says this: I also want the women to dress modestly, with decency and propriety, adorning themselves not with elaborate hairstyles or gold or pearls or expensive clothes. And see, upon the first reading of that verse, you might think that the Bible wouldn't want women to wear jewelry or to make their hair nice for something or to avoid expensive clothes. But really, this verse has little or nothing to do with the actual clothes the women would wear, but rather the heart motive behind why they were wearing them. Women and men alike are supposed to come to church in this passage in a non-distracting way. That's what they're talking about, going to church. And he's encouraging them, do that so that it's not distracting, so that God gets the full attention of everyone. And some of these styles that he's talking about in these verses would have been very distracting in Paul's day and age. For example, if someone showed up to church today in a full tuxedo with a flower in his pocket and slicked back hair, or if a lady showed up in a prom dress with her hair super done up and her makeup and a really nice and beautiful diamond necklace, that might be really distracting for us at church. And rather than think about the service, you probably would start to think and be distracted wondering what those people, why were they so dressed up and who are they and where did they get these clothing or diamond necklace from? See, the main thing about what you wear is that it's modest, that it honors God, that your parents are okay with it, and then that it wouldn't cause a distraction for the people that you're going to church with. And that's what that passage in 1 Timothy was talking about. Another very famous passage about the way people should dress is in 1 Corinthians 11, 4 through 6, which say this: Every man who prays or prophesies with his head covered dishonors his head. But every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head. It is the same as having her head shaved. For if a woman does not cover her head, she might as well have her hair cut off. But if it is a disgrace for a woman to have her hair cut off or her head shaved, then she should cover her head. Now again, these verses have been very misquoted and have led to a lot of arguments about head coverings in the church for years. But if we think about the context of this verse and look at the history of that Greek and Roman society that they lived in, you would learn that men would remove their head coverings as a sign of respect. Now that's very similar today still at a sporting event when the announcer comes on and says, please remove your hat for the men remove your hats for the singing of our national anthem. And not only that, but men in that time didn't remove their head coverings when they were talking to their false gods. They just kept wearing their head coverings. And so Paul was encouraging them, show sign of respect to our God, the true God, by removing your head covering. Unlike the men of our society, remove your hat in the presence of God when you're praying or at church. And so in a similar way, in their time, not all women wore those head coverings that Paul is talking about. But if they did wear one and they removed it in public, that would be considered an act of immodesty and disrespect to her husband and to the culture. So Paul was urging women not to commit those acts of immodesty or disrespect. He even compared it for a woman of being bald because, again, in his time, that would have been a cultural disgrace if a woman was bald. So Paul isn't telling men today that we can't have something on our head during church or when we're praying. Like perhaps maybe if we did church in the park and maybe some guys were wearing hats, or if you're out in the snow and you're wearing a hat and you're praying to God while you're taking a walk. Paul isn't telling us that that's wrong. He was saying in their culture, in their time, that might have been a sign of something wrong. And he's not telling women that they must cover their heads, that for all generations and even now that women should cover their heads when they're praying or when they're in church. But rather, these verses were written to those original readers. And his point to them was, don't disrespect God while you are praying or having church. And so if I had to guess what Paul might write in these verses today, I think he would more talk about not having the TV on while you're doing your devotions or praying, which could be distracting to you. And he might say something like, wear normal, modest clothes to church and try to look different than our culture does. Don't copy the styles of them, but use modesty. Use appropriate clothes when you go to church or when you're living your everyday life. See, these verses were written in context to that particular group, but it was addressing a heart issue of having respect for God while you are praying and having respect for God when you come to church to wear the appropriate and modest clothing. So that is what we need to do as well. So when you think about how to dress, at least in these last two passages, I want you to think about it like this instead. Does what I'm wearing honor God? Literally, are my clothes so inappropriate or so distracting or so immodest that they draw attention to myself and in which case would disrespect God? I wonder when the last time that you put on a shirt or a pair of pants or shorts or really any piece of clothing and wondered to yourself, I wonder if this is honoring and respectful to wear. See, God cares about the number of hairs on your head. He cares about your life. He cares about your soul. He even died for you. So he really does care about what you wear. I'd encourage you to consider these verses and realize God was calling his people to stand out and be a difference in their culture. And we can still do that today. See, Paul wanted them to pay the most respect that they could to God while they worshiped him and while they prayed to him. And he wanted them to dress modestly in all situations. So lastly, for you teenagers, I want to say this. You'll need to not only submit to God with what you wear and submit to your own thoughts of wondering if this is modest or not, but you need to submit to your parents too when it comes to dressing modestly. They have a better idea of what would be appropriate or what would be inappropriate, and God has placed them as authority figures in your life. So I need you, and I hope that you'll obey them when it comes to dressing modestly. I hope and pray that you'll use this video as a challenge for yourself to dress modestly, to obey your parents, and to respect God with what you wear. I hope this video helped you today, helped you learn a little bit about some of those challenging verses and the way we dress, and I hope that it provides a springboard for you to go out and dress really modestly and care about what you wear, not just to throw something on just because, but to actually think, does this honor God? God bless you, and I hope this video helps you today.